Hi, everyone. We are back for another Facebook Live today, and we are so I'm excited to have Coach Leanne with us. I always love having a companion with me so that we can kind of dialogue back and forth. And I think sometimes the energy is different when two people are sharing. So we're welcoming you here today. And you know my drill. I always like to greet everyone and hear from everyone before we get started so that I know that we're live. That just gives me the confidence to talk. There's something weird about talking to yourself. I do talk to myself actually, but not when I'm thinking I'm talking to someone else. When I'm talking to myself, I really am talking to myself. So I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear that we have made our connection and we are live, and we are excited to talk today about are you a reactor or are you a responder? And actually, what is the difference? Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Janice. You are up there saying hi to me and Leanne, and I really appreciate that. So today we're going to be talking about the difference between reacting and responding, and what do you do more often, and can you change the channel? Like when you're finding yourself in reactive mode, are you capable? Are you able to change the channel to respond mode? Do you know how to do that? Because this is a really, really important skill, especially when you live with someone who pushes your buttons. And if you're living with someone who pushes your buttons a lot, it's easy to live in reaction mode. Right, Leanne?
Man, isn't it though, Leslie? Thank you so much. And greetings, everyone. It's so great to see you all here. And, Leslie, when you talked about changing the channel just now, changing the channel and asking, are we able? And can we? And I say, yes, we can. I love the word responsibility and just the core word of the difference between reaction and responding. We have the ability to respond differently if we have the courage to pause and change the channel. And I'm just saying, when I knew that we were going to be doing this together, every time I sign up to do one of these lives with you, I trust that the Lord is going to provide me with incredible opportunities to practice what it is that I am really trying to grow and learn in. And these last couple of weeks have been no different. So I am excited for today and to chat with you and to learn from our folks here on this page about what it means to take responsibility, to change the channel when it is to our best well being.
And I love that you said that, to our best well-being, because sometimes it is in our best well-being to react, right? I mean, if you know, if you perceive danger, whether it's you perceive a spider crawling up your arm or a snake in your path. Leah and I were on a hike a couple of years ago, and we heard this little, and we thought, we'll jump back. And we thought, thank you, Mr. Rattlesnake, for warning us that we were about to step on you, or get in your way. So we reacted, and our body is hardwired by God, our creator, to respond viscerally to a lack of safety, right? So when we are in danger, there's a part in the back of our brain called the amygdala brain that just reacts, right? And that's how God wired you. So please don't hear us say, oh, you should never react. You should just be like a statue stone and just respond to all. No, we're not saying that at all. We react in laughter. We react in tears. We react in jumping back in certain things. And that's part of our humanity. And sometimes it's a really important thing for our safety. And other times we react and we were wrong. Like the snake wasn't a snake. It was just like a rope. Or we react because we thought we heard somebody say something snarky and it wasn't snarky, but yet we said something snarky back in a reaction and we feel bad about ourselves, or we misunderstood something and we were critical, or we were impatient, or we were reactive because we perceived something that may not have been the way we thought it was. And then we react in icky ways or critical ways or even passive ways. We might react in like a frozen fear instead of reacting in an active fear. We react in a frozen fear. And then we feel bad because we didn't take appropriate responsibility for ourselves and create safety. We just froze and did nothing in our reaction to fear. And so we just want to talk about that experience for you, what it's like for you, and what do you do when you're in that place of reactivity, you're aware of it. Maybe it's not even on the outside. So when I was thinking about this, and Leanne and I were sharing about this, sometimes my reaction is totally inside. Like I'm pretty good at not showing some things, especially emotional reactions. If it was a physical reaction, you would hear it. I have a very high startle reflex, and my kids used to love like scaring me, jumping out of closets, doing all kinds of other kinds of things. They would never go to a scary movie with me because I would scream out loud because I just have this visceral startle reflex that's pretty loud. And even when people go to the movies with me, I have to close my eyes and hold my mouth shut when I know that the music is changing because I just can't help it. I'm going to go, but emotionally I can react like with judgment, criticalness, impatience, irritability, frustration. Those are my reaction modes inside. Now, I might not always show it on the outside, but I don't even like feeling it so much on the inside. And I've learned how to change a channel. And so we want to teach you how to do that a little bit today. But tell us a little bit about your experiences in the reaction. Leanne, what are the inside reactors for you when you're feeling threatened, whether it's physically threatened like the snake thing, but sometimes it's emotionally threatened, like I'm not accepted, people don't like me, they don't value what I have to say, I'm not being listened to, I'm getting irritated because I'm not being heard, whatever it might be.
Are you in my head right now, Leslie? Are you in my head? So this is stuff that I have been dealing with these last couple of weeks too. And I realize that no matter how often I do this work with you, work with our ladies, teach this, guide it, coach through it, stuff still comes up in me. And so I'm thinking of our snake example here for a moment. When we were hiking and, when we heard the rattle, you were like, what is that, Leanne? I'm like, okay, whoa, stop. That is a rattlesnake. And then, so we stopped. We stopped. We looked over to the side. We're like, where is it? And it's like, wow, it is literally 2 feet from us. And you're like, what do we do? And I said, well, we have some options here. We can turn around and walk the other way. We can wait till the rattlesnake moves on and just sit here. Or we can consciously make a decision to give the snake room and walk around it. And so just so everybody who might be wondering, what did Leanne and Leslie do? We paused, we looked, we assessed, we talked about it, and we collectively made the decision to walk around it and keep going. And then the cool thing was, God provided us an opportunity. Someone was coming along. I don't know if you remember this, Leslie, on the
I
path,
do.
right? And we were able to say to them, hey, rattlesnake, 6 o'clock, 500 feet in front of you. And so when I think of the emotional space that I can get in, if I am really conscious and present and able to turn the channel, I can be curious and say, what is coming up for me? When my channel is not as well dialed in, I can get pretty judgmental. I can shift blame. I can say that that person is responsible for what I am thinking about and what I am feeling. And then my default goes downhill super fast. And I find myself, Leslie, with more of a almost a victim mindset. And then it leads me to revisiting my old behavior of 25 years ago instead of the new woman that God is creating me to be and who I want to be. And it's really humbling for me when I go to that downhill spiral and I need a reset. And so anyway, I'm going to stop right there. It's just what I've been living. The cultures that we work in, the people that we meet, the conversations that we have. The Lord is faithful to bring up, at least for me, into my world to show me where my blind spots are and where my reactivity can still come in. And it's not real pretty. Sometimes my reactivity is pretty icky, and I'm not real proud of how it is that I can show up when I am being a little bit activated.
And I love how you said activated because we do get activated. All of us have triggers. We have triggers from our childhood. I remember somebody snubbing me at the pickleball court not too long ago, and the trigger that came up for me was, of course, the rejection of my childhood trigger when I was totally an unpopular girl, that nobody wanted to play with me, that nobody invited me to their parties, that nobody wanted to, pick me for their kickball team. And so, when someone snubbed me and didn't want to play pickleball with me because I wasn't as good as she was and she didn't want to lose, which is her choice. But it was like, it just triggered that old rejection stuff. And I've worked on that. I understand it, but it's still a soft, sensitive button, right? When it gets pushed. And so is that her fault or is that my responsibility? So here's where I could react with, how dare her treat me this way? And who does she think she is? And I'm not playing with her anymore either. And I'm not even coming to this group anymore because I don't like the way she treats. I could go there just in my head. I probably wouldn't show it, right? Although I did leave because I knew that I was so triggered that I wasn't able to be present in that moment with other people in a way that I wanted to. So I had to actually leave and sit in my car and take care of me because someone pushed an old wound button that activated all kinds of internal stuff that I had to take care of. Just like the rattlesnake activated a fear response, which we were able to take a moment and say, what do we want to do about this, right? We didn't go hacking the rattlesnake with an axe, but we did decide to not interact with that rattlesnake and kind of take the long way around and thank him for warning us that he was about to bite, right? And so I wasn't going to argue with a rattlesnake. I didn't want the sting. So I think this is really important when we think about giving ourselves compassion and grace for when we find ourselves in reactive mode, like I was at the pickleball court. She didn't know I was in reactive mode. I knew it. Thankfully, I didn't. I'm past the point of vomiting all over her and yelling at her or complaining about her to someone else. I didn't do any of that. I just left. But all that was going on inside of me as I was reacting. And so what do we do with this? Because sometimes you're in a home where someone is pushing your buttons constantly, and you are not only reacting on the inside, but you're blowing up on the outside in front of your kids, in front of your counselor, in front of other people that is actually costing you in ways that you don't want it to cost you. Because if you were ever to be react in an aggressive way and you push him or slap him, he's going to use that against you. He's going to call the police and accuse you of child abuse. And I've had 2 women in my caseload, my private counseling or coaching caseload, where that's happened, where they just got so provoked and they didn't go away and take care of themselves, but they tried to deal with the battle in the moment, and they got so provoked that they lost personal control over themselves, and they slapped or they did something destructive in a place where he could use it against them, and they were arrested for abuse. They were arrested, even though he was verbally provoking them, right? And so this is such an important topic, ladies, for 2 reasons. One is for your own growth and integrity. Like Leanne said, we're never done with our work. I'm pretty old at this point, and I still got triggered as a woman, a senior citizen adult from my 7-year-old child, right? I still got triggered by that rejection trigger, that you're not enough. We don't think you're good enough trigger that I have worked on, but I got triggered. So what do? You react on the inside, yes. Hopefully you've learned enough self-control to not vomit it out on the outside, but some of you are still struggling with that piece, right? But you do have choices to make, just like Leanne and I had choices to make when we heard the rattlesnake. And we want you to be more conscious of those choices, because otherwise I could have just gone home and cried my eyes out from that pickleball incident and told my husband I'm never going back, and I want to move. I don't like these girls, and they hurt me and they hurt my feelings. And God, why do you keep bringing people in my life who reject me and hurt I could have gone in that direction, but I know better. I felt all those feelings. So write this down. A reaction is emotionally driven. A reaction is emotionally driven. Whether your reaction is internal or external, and you're screaming and yelling, it's emotionally driven, right? When we heard that rattlesnake, both of us jumped back, right? It was emotionally driven. and we reacted, rightly so, right? But then we pressed pause and thought about how we wanted to proceed, right? And so a response is decision driven, and it's usually made from more information, right? How do I want to show up? How do I want to be in this moment, right? And so I'm having this emotionally reactive trigger response to this rejection at the pickleball court. Nobody saw it but me, and I'm in my car calming myself down so I can respond and drive home in a way that makes me happy about me, right? So even if no one sees your reaction, you want to be able to know how to handle it on the inside.
Leslie,
So, yeah, you were just talking about you recently having to practice that, right?
well, I just so appreciate you saying that because oftentimes it's what's going on inside of us that can cause that turmoil and then create all kinds of stories in our head. And some people may not see it on the outside, especially when we make the conscious decision to remove ourselves from the more volatile situation. And you chose to do that, go into your car at pickleball. I chose to do that when a conversation was a little more heated than I wanted to engage with. And I didn't want to say something maybe unkind or not as helpful. And so I removed myself from the situation and it gave myself time to calm down and to really think about who I want to be in the moment. And when I think of the reaction space, it's that default. And you talked about response comes from it being or that reaction comes from being emotionally driven. Isn't that what you just said?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the response comes from more curiosity. And I
Yeah.
almost think of it
Mm-hmm.
like, we have this sponsor that's going to hold us up, that's going to help us to make a different decision moving forward. And that decision can come from the inside out.
I was sharing with Leanne. So I shared with you an old trigger from my childhood, but I'm going to share with you a new trigger that it is I'm not proud of at all. It's not something that I would admire about myself. But I tend to like things my way. Who can who can relate to that? Except for I live with someone, and this person also likes it his way, and sometimes we don't always um, like the other person's way. So I'm in my office, and I'm practicing actually some work I need to do to be more present and to calm down. And that requires me to be quiet inside and outside. And just, I do an exercise where I say, what do I see? What do I feel? And what do I hear? And I'm just training myself inside to pay more attention to myself so that I don't react. So I'm doing this exercise with all good intention. I'm doing this exercise and I'm hearing my husband stir his coffee like that, really loud, which is how he stirs his coffee with a clanging spoon, though, not a plastic pen. So it's really loud. So I'm having a reaction to that. How come he's so noisy? Why does he have to stir his coffee so noisy? And so when I'm saying, what do I see? What do I feel? I feel irritated. I feel irritated, right? What do I hear? I hear that noisy spoon. And I hear myself being very critical of that, judgmental, condemning. How dare him disturb my peace? And so I'm just being real, ladies. So I still have my own work to do, right? And I don't have a bad man that I live with. He's just a noisy man, right? And so he's clanging his coffee, and I'm inside reacting, right? Now, in my more immature years, I might have been critical outside, like, boy, you were sure noisy with your coffee. I would have been snarky about it, right? I'm trying to have a quiet time, and you're all banging out here. I didn't do that, but I was still snarky on the inside. I was reacting on the inside with irritation and judgment. Here's where it gets cool. I noticed I was doing that, right? Because I was asking myself, what do I see? What do I feel? I feel irritable. What do I hear? I hear that clanging. And I also hear my judgmental, condemning voice. He shouldn't be clanging his spoon like I'm the expert of how he should stir his coffee, right? And then I asked myself, do I have to continue to feel this way? And I said, no, I don't even want to feel this way. I don't want to feel irritated. I want to feel grateful that I have a husband who's alive and pretty kind most of the time. And so he stirs his coffee loud. That's the way he likes to stir his coffee. And to kind of let it go. But had I not had that moment of noticing, this is what I'm doing, this is the track I'm going down, and I didn't change the channel, if I hadn't done that, because I just didn't notice, I might have ended that quiet time with a snarky remark. Yeah, I was trying to have my quiet time, but couldn't have it because you were just out here banging around. I could have done that. I have done that. But I didn't. Not because I had self-control and kept my mouth shut. I didn't feel it anymore. I was able to let it go. And this is the power of learning to respond, not just on the outside of how you want to be, but on the inside of how you want to be. Recognizing what's going on and taking responsibility. It's not his fault I'm feeling irritable. It's my fault because I'm judging and condemning the way he's stirring his coffee. Or I'm judging and condemning my pickleball friend for not wanting to play with me, right? That's her freedom. She has that choice. I don't want to play with certain players either for different reasons, right? But I still don't want to play with certain people. It's okay to have a choice. And I don't have to be offended at everyone who doesn't choose me like I might have because of the wound of my childhood. So this is so important. We want to give you some skills on how to switch that channel. Any thoughts, Leanne?
Well, switching that channel. And I love how you brought about, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I experiencing here in the moment? What am I hearing? And, God gave us five senses. And sometimes that stopping for what do I see? What do I hear? And what do I feel is not enough for me. So I oftentimes I'll go, what am I smelling right now?
Fires
Right?
of hell.
Exactly. I'm burning up inside.
It's coming at me.
I'm smelling, all kinds of shrapnel and maybe some vomit that's about ready to come out of my mouth. And I don't want to do that. And what am I tasting? What do I want to taste? And let's say I love that you brought it up, that space of letting it go. But if we don't stop for a moment and really take a good look at ourselves and decide if that's how we want to engage with the situation, we can fall back into that default. And we get to decide, how do I want to feel? So, what am I feeling right now? And is that how I want to feel moving forward? 5 minutes from now, do I still want to be spinning in this loop? Or do I want to feel different? Do I want to hear things different? Because I can hear things through a real critical spirit. My ears have a critical filter. And so do my eyes. And my heart does too. But is that my best self? Ugh, not so much.
Yeah. And this is so powerful because what we tend to do when we're in victim mindset, and Leanne talked about this slipping a little bit into victim mindset. We all go there. What we tend to do is we think out there has to change in order for me to feel better. Like out there, like he has to stop stirring his coffee. I'll give you another example. This was years ago, but I was sitting in church and there was a noisy family behind me, a single mom with like 4 kids, and they were talking and moving and coloring and chatting with each other. And I was starting to feel irritable because I was judging them, saying they shouldn't be so noisy. And why isn't she getting her kids under control? And this isn't fair. She's disturbing my church experience. I'm just being real, ladies. Okay, these are my thoughts. She should change. She should change. She should leave the service if her kids aren't that going to be controlled. Or why isn't she better at mothering them and taking care of their noisiness and all of that judgmental, condemning spirit that I had, right? And I was aware. I'm aware of myself now. And I pressed pause. I'm at church and I'm having those thoughts. And I'm saying, is this who I want to be? A critical, condemning person of a single mom who's trying to go to church and she's trying to bring her kids all by herself. And I'm like, absolutely not. This is not who I want to be. What do I need to do? I need to change the channel. What thoughts do I need to have? Thank God she's here, Lord. Thank God she's here. Thank God she's got 4 little ones who are hearing the word of God. Thank God she's trying as hard as she can to be a good parent. And as soon as I changed my channel of thoughts, I didn't feel irritable toward her anymore. I wanted to go turn around and give her a hug and say, how can I help you, girl? How can I help you? Right? She didn't have to change in order for me to respond the way I wanted to. I had to change. And this is such an important tool. I had to change my thoughts about the situation because my thoughts, whether I was thinking ill of the pickleball lady who rejected me, or I was thinking ill of my husband who was stirring too loud, or I was thinking ill of the person behind me who wasn't doing what I thought she should as a mother, we all have that judgmental spirit at times. And Jesus warns us, be careful, don't judge. That doesn't mean we can't discern when someone's out of line. I'm not talking about that. And many of your husbands are out of line. They're doing nasty things to you. They're betraying you and lying to you. And I'm not saying, oh, he's probably fine. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, how do I want to let this bother me? Do I want to let this bother me the rest of my life? Right? So let's say your parents abused you as a child and you're still ruminating about that. Do you want them to ruin your childhood and your adulthood because you can't let go of something? Because you can't move past it? Doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with that person anymore. But sometimes that person's still in your head and you don't have a relationship with that person anymore. And their condemning words and their nastiness is still inside of you. And it's causing you to react internally and causing your own health issues at times.
Well, it is, and those health issues can be detrimental. And, as you were sharing, Leslie, I was writing down, we can be so full of she should, he should, I should. And if we're holding on to all the shoulds, there is no room for what is possible. And, to welcome in another way to look at a situation. And so pushing that pause button, I had to make myself one. You've seen this before. Maybe not. I had to make one because sometimes I need that reminder, ladies, that it's really okay to give myself a little bit of breathing room. And I get to decide what it is that I want to feel. I get to decide what I want to believe about this other person and about my circumstances. And I get to decide and have a choice about what I want to believe about God and the journey that He has me on. And so
And
sometimes, oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. I was just going to say, Monica is saying this. I think this is really important, Leanne. I'd like you to add to this because I get to decide. Monica is saying it's one thing when you get triggered by accident, and it's something else when it's on purpose.
Oh,
And
man.
so when someone is purposely pushing your buttons, they know what your weaknesses are, or they know, or maybe they don't even think about pushing your buttons. They're just lying to you. They're not lying to you to push your buttons. They're just lying to you. They're just cheating on you. They're just yelling at you and calling you horrible names. I mean, they're not saying, oh, I think I'll push your buttons today. They're just reacting themselves. They're reacting to something that they feel threatened by, or they're not controlling themselves and they're vomiting all over you. And of course, you're not liking it for sure. What's the difference? What would you see as that difference? But when someone's triggered you accidentally, like my pickleball person, she didn't intentionally try to hurt me, but it
Right.
did. And someone who is screaming in your face profanities and saying you're awful and I wish I never married you, or I'm, going to lie to you, or whatever they're doing. And you're getting triggered, and they're doing it on purpose. And how do you still have choices here? How do you still have choices? This is really, really important.
How do we still have choices? Well, remembering that we have agency, that we have a God who goes before us, who created us, who's going to allow us, excuse me, to see truth in us. So when we know who we really are, what somebody is throwing at us, the daggers that they are throwing at us, and what they're speaking over and into our lives, if we know that they're not true, we're able to say it. And so when we let them totally penetrate our heart and our mind, we're giving all of our power away and we're giving them the control over our emotions. And we're allowing them to take charge of how we feel. And so we get to plan in advance who we want to be in the moment. So if somebody came up to me and I wasn't wearing a wig, which I occasionally do for fun events, if somebody came up to me today and looked at me and said, Leanne, I really hate your blue hair. It's really ugly. Do I know enough about myself to know that I don't have blue hair? And I could say to them, wow, that's your opinion, but I won't take that on. I'm not going to wear that robe of shame and blame that you're trying to put on me. That is not who I am at the core of who I am. So one of the strategies we can do is to prepare in advance, to build up our strength from within. So when someone does throw a dagger at us, I don't have to curl up in a ball and hide or run away. I can stand in the strength that God has given me to proclaim who it is that I am. And I can say, I don't agree with you right now.
Yeah, it still hurts. It still hurts when someone
Yeah.
who you are living with or you're in some sort of relationship with, whether it's your mother or your sister or your husband, says ugly things about you, like you have ugly hair, or you are getting fat, or you're a terrible mother, or I wish I never married you. I mean, words hurt. Words hurt. So don't hear us say that you're not going to feel anything. You're going to feel pain. But here, I'll give you a couple of scripture examples. First, I'm going to start with a really good example. Martin Luther King, I think one of the wisest men who ever spoken about these issues of not reacting, right? Not reacting. He's teaching people, hey, when someone treats you like a nobody, you need to remember that you are a somebody. And that's on you. Because they're not treating you like a somebody. They're treating you like a nobody. They're treating you like you're garbage because you're Black. And Martin Luther King said, you can't control how they treat you. You have to control who you are. And you are a somebody. Now, Jesus said the same thing. And I'll give you two examples, Jesus and Peter. So I'll kind of go through the scripture about this. We often get confused on this turn the other cheek passage in the Bible. Turn the other cheek. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. If someone forces you to walk 1 mile, you choose to walk a second mile. What does that mean? It means the same thing that Martin Luther King was trying to teach the African Americans at the time civil disobedience came into play, okay? That you can resist oppression in a different way. Instead of reacting to oppression by someone punches you, I'm going to punch you. You call me a name, I'm going to call you a name. You do that, I'm going to call, that's our reaction mode. But Jesus says, hey, if someone treats you like an object, someone treats you like a nobody and slaps your cheek, how insulting. In that culture, he's speaking to the event where Roman soldiers would abuse the Jews for no reason. They would just treat them disrespectfully, and they would slap them, or they would force them to carry their bag and walk a mile, right? Because they could, right? And this enrages us inside, right? It enrages us inside, as it probably should. And Jesus is saying, hey, you don't want to pay back evil for evil, because that will deform you. That will turn you into someone just like them. Don't do that. Instead, you need to remember you have agency. Leanne said that word, agency. You have choices here. You don't have to just react to how someone treats you. So when they turn and they slap you on one cheek, guess what? You have a choice. You can punch them in the nose, or you can just be the better person and turn the other cheek. If they force you to walk a mile, you can throw down the bag and say, here, stupid jerk. Or you can say, I choose to do more, right? Peter said the same thing. When your master is unjust and you are a slave, a nobody, you're treated like a nobody, you can still be a somebody by the way you handle yourself, by the way you handle their mistreatment of you. Doesn't mean that you ignore it or you say it's not real. It's real. And if you have a choice, get out of there. But these instances, biblically, people didn't have a choice. They were slaves. They were oppressed in a political system that they didn't have a choice, like the African Americans to Martin Luther King's day. They didn't have the laws that were in place then that they do now that says, you're not allowed to treat me this way. If your husband's oppressing you in violent ways, call the police. You have a choice. And God has put the civil authorities, instead of hitting him back, call the police, because if you hit him back, you're going to be arrested too, right? So this is the part of learning to respond because of who you are. Jesus is saying, don't forget, you are a somebody, even if someone treats you as a nobody, as a worthless piece of garbage that sometimes men call women who are in destructive marriages. And then we just react by calling them a few choice names ourselves. And we're then just becoming like the lowest denominator. And Jesus is saying to you, friend, I've got better for you. You don't have to stoop to the lowest denominator of humanity. You have agency here. This is how I made you. You have choices. Don't forget. You have choices. And this is what we need to learn. I do have a choice on how I'm going to handle this. I do have a choice of whether I'm going to stay in this. I do have a choice of whether I'm going to listen to this or let it affect me. Those are my choices. I don't have a choice to change him. I don't have a choice to get him to stop. And if he's not stopping, what are my choices? I can call the police. That's a response. I can leave the room. That's a response. I can put earplugs in. That's a response. I can not repay evil for evil. That's a response. Those are all decisions you make. They're not just reacting out of the moment. And this is what Jesus is trying to teach us as his followers, to learn to respond out of, don't forget who you are. Don't forget who you are, child. You're my child. I want better for you than this. And respond appropriately, including getting safe. The prudent see danger and take refuge. They don't keep walking into danger.
So true. I just love learning alongside of you and sharing and teaching and learning from our community here that join us each time for these lives. Are we willing? How long are we going to be willing to allow others to devastate us? Leslie, and I think so oftentimes that's a question we can ask ourselves, because sometimes we do need to feel. We're not telling you to numb out and to pretend it's not existing and all of that. I love that you brought that up. We can choose to do more, to be more, to love more. And sometimes for me, I'm going to throw a tip out there
And
that,
we can choose to get away from our abuser. And I think,
yes,
others are saying, reaction is not a bad thing if someone's stabbing you. No, you're going to bleed. But if you keep going back to that person and letting them stab you again and again and again, that is your choice. And you have other choices.
absolutely. And, I love that you brought up, brainstorming. What are my choices here? When we're under stress, when we're in reactive mode, we can forget that we have choices. So sometimes pushing that pause button is taking time to do a brain dump. What are my options here? What choices do I have in the moment when I am being activated? What can I do? And sometimes we need to give ourselves a timeline. I'm going to give myself 15 minutes to pause right now and to do my own work so that I can make a more conscious decision instead of reacting out of my emotions and reacting out of fear. Because, like we shared at the beginning, when we react, we are dialing in an emotional level. It is emotionally driven. When we're responding, we're making decisions, and it's a more conscious as opposed to a default.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got a lot of questions coming in. So let me go to the questions and start answering them. And
Oh, there's some good ones. I see them too.
yeah, there was one I saw here that I wanted to answer. And I just want to say this really quickly, Kate, to you. You're not on here. My question is, why do husbands choose to do this to their wives? And I'm not going to answer that question because who knows? I mean, you're asking for the craziest sin. Like, why does a man molest a child? Why does a man, kill his children because he's angry at his wife? I mean, sin is insanity. So, but what I want to say to all of you is that sometimes we get stuck in asking the wrong question. Now, we're going to answer these questions, but sometimes we get stuck in asking the wrong question. We've been talking a lot about this with our coaches on staff. What's the best question to ask ourselves, or what's the best question to ask someone else? And so let me give you an example. Leanne and I are both a part of a group where a man was diagnosed with brain cancer. Okay, and at first he went into reaction mode, right? Like, why me? Why am I? I'm only 56 years old. Why do I have to deal with this? And rightly so. He went into the why question. And then he stopped and he asked himself, he said, that's a bad question, because there's no answer for that question. So he pressed pause and he reflected. And he said, the best question for me to ask myself right now is, what matters most? What matters most right now? right? So I want you to think about questions that you ask that sometimes take you down a rabbit trail of no answers. And the why question, why does someone else do what they do, is a question that's going to take you nowhere because there's no answer for some of those questions. Job in the Old Testament spent a lot of time spinning. Why is this happening to me? And his friends try to tell him why, because you did something wrong, Job. That's why. They weren't right, and Job never knew. He never knew about that conversation with Satan and God, right? But he spent a lot of his energy spinning in this why question. What matters most now? So if your husband treats you this way, what matters most now for you? This is an important question. What matters most now for you? And if you don't know the answer to that, I would highly encourage you to take our webinar next week, our workshop on how long do you do this? How long do you keep trying? And if something is happening, how do you know it's real or just image management? And if it's not real, what matters most now for you? What do you need to do to get healthy and strong? That's the question. And if we're not asking that question and we keep spinning in the why question, why is he treating me this way? Why is he doing this to me? You are going to stay stuck for a long, long time because you can't answer that question. There is no answer. It's insanity.
That's right.
It's insanity that he's doing it. And it's insanity that you're staying and letting it, right? So what matters most now is a better question. So let's get to these questions. What can I do when my reactive triggers are still affecting my physical health?
Self-care, self-care, self-care. Find something, and the self-care is not selfish. So when I say self-care, I'm talking about taking a little bit of an assessment of yourself, body, mind, soul, and spirit, and see where it is that you need the most support right now and invite that into your world. The triggers are there and your health will be affected. We see that in our community all the time. I know in my life when I wasn't paying attention to what was really going on in my heart and in my spirit, my body took a hit. And so becoming very aware, making sure that you're going to the doctor, that you're getting your blood work done. COVID has provided a lot of opportunity for us to dismiss our physical health and not get the help that we need in that arena. And so check your blood pressure, go and get the support that you might need. That is one tip. And now I'll turn it over to you, Leslie. There's a whole bunch that we can do in this.
Yes, self-care, we're just going to go basic. So we've been talking about emotional self-care and mental self-care during this conversation, but I would just talk about body self-care. And two things I would recommend that you be vigilant over, or three things. One is that you exercise. As tired as you are, that you do something to get your body's energy moving and the toxins have the opportunity to release. Even a gentle walk is better than sitting all day in front of the TV or reading or whatever. So do some exercise. And if all you can do is 1 minute of walking, do it. And then tomorrow say, I'm going to do 1 minute and 1 second. And I'm going to do 1 minute and 2 seconds. Or if you can't walk, you could do arm circles sitting. Do stretching, something that's getting your body moving. Studies have shown, for example, that veterans who have PTSD, who take an exercise class like yoga and become more centered in their body and their breath, actually recover better from PTSD than sometimes with therapy. So your body is an important part of self-care. It's not just your mental self-care, it's your physical self-care. So take care of your body, do some exercise. The second thing is make sure you're getting enough sleep, because healing requires sleep. All right. And if you're trying to stay up, to read or watch videos, or you're having trouble sleeping, you might need to get some medication for that for now, or go to the doctor. Get enough sleep. Make sure that you are prioritizing your sleep higher than other things like helping your kids with your homework or cleaning the house or whatever, because part of regenerating your health is sleeping. And if you're not doing that, you're going to compromise your health. The third thing is I would tell you to get some training in breath work. Leanne and I just went to a seminar on breath work, and God has given us our breath as a means of instant feel better. And there's techniques of doing that with your breath. We all breathe 23,000 times a day. Most of it is unconscious. Most of it we don't think about at all. But you can calm yourself down with certain breath techniques, and you can energize yourself with certain breath techniques. And if you learn those breath techniques, when you need that energy or you need that calmness, you can change the way that you breathe. For example, Navy SEALs learn the box breath. So it's 4 in, hold 4, 4 out, hold. In your nose, hold, out through your nose, hold. All right. Why do they learn that? Because they are in high stress, high reactive situations. When you're being shot at and you're being chased and you're being followed and you're being in bomb situation, you better believe that your reactive mode is very high. And so they teach that breath thing, they train on that so that they don't react, that they can respond with all the mental capacity and physical capacity and emotional capacity at their disposal. They're not just reacting willy-nilly, or they wouldn't be a Navy SEAL. Now, they do lots of other training to teach themselves how to respond to trauma, to stress, to terrible oppression or killing situations in a way that doesn't endanger themselves or other people. You can learn to do this. Now, we're not Navy SEALs, we're probably not going to Navy SEAL school, but they do the box breath. You can learn to do that. And it's not something you just do in a crisis. You must practice it so that you can do it in a crisis, and it works. And so there are things that you can do for yourself that says, I'm going to learn to care for myself. I'm going to steward this precious body. 3 things. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to learn some breathing techniques, which are all over the internet. You can take some classes on that. And I'm going to sleep better. And those 3 things, if you work on them faithfully, they will improve your physical health. Not to mention if you eat better and, work on your mental things, but take it slow. Start with your body, because your body, if it's not working, it's hard to get your mind working too. If you're not sleeping, you're not thinking right. It just goes together, right? So make sure your body is cared for.
Can I tag on to that, Leslie, with something that
Mhm.
we heard in our seminar that we went to? So here's just a hot tip quote. If you want to feel better in 30 days, change your diet. If you want to feel better in a week, drink more water. If you want to feel better tomorrow, get a good night's rest. And if you want to feel better in 5 minutes, breathe. And sometimes that is going into breath work and taking time to allow the Lord to just breathe into your spirit, into your lungs. It's life sustaining.
And again, it's not normally we take pretty shallow breaths. And so it's really learning the different ways of breathing. So if you just took, and I'm not going to take our time right now to do that, but if you just took 3 or 4 deep breaths, just that would energize you. All right. If you did the box breathing, I do the box breathing all the time. I'm stressed out while I'm driving. I'm doing my box breathing. I'm stressed out waiting in line because I get impatient. I'm doing my box breathing so that I just don't react, so that I calm down calm my body down, right? I don't want to feel irritated or impatient or agitated. I can work on my thinking and I can work on my physiology. Those are
Right.
ways that you can do that.
Yeah, it works in when we're being triggered. Our body is having a very visceral physical response, and allowing breath to come in gives your cells all kinds of good oxygen so you can start to calm yourself down.
Mhm, mhm. All right. How do you exit graciously when you're being triggered by a loved one? I don't know that you have to always exit graciously. If you had to go throw up, how would you exit graciously? Probably you wouldn't, right? So you probably would just say, gotta go. I gotta go to the bathroom, right? It wouldn't be necessarily gracious. And I don't think you need to put that pressure on yourself. It's better for you to exit than for you to throw up in public, right? Whether you do it graciously or not. So if someone is triggering you, I think you can say, you know what, I have to run to the bathroom for a minute. You don't have to say why. I got to go to the bathroom, and just go. Just calm yourself down. Do what you need to do, right? Or I'm sorry, but I can't watch this right now. Or I'm sorry, I can't hear this right now, right? If they're telling you something that's triggering you, it might be about an accident or about, whatever is triggering you. I'm sorry, I can't listen to this right now. Sometimes I'll say to my husband, he's a news junkie and he loves watching all this war stuff. I can't do it. I'm like, I can't do this. I want to watch HGTV and see someone plant flowers and decorate their house. I just need calm when I'm watching. I can't watch this anymore, And so I don't know that you have to be all that gracious. Now, I don't want to be critical, like you shouldn't watch this either, but I can't watch this. I can't do this right now, right? Speak for yourself and take care of yourself.
Well, I just love that, Leslie. We can speak for ourselves. And part of our work to do, and I know you're going to be addressing this in the workshop, is to know that we all have different preferences. And when we are taking the time to really get to know ourselves and who God created us to be, then we're going to know where our bandwidth lies. I only have so much bandwidth for certain things. And especially after a full day, sometimes I just want quiet in the night too. And my husband loves movies and he loves war movies too.
They should watch movies together.
Uh,
TV together.
or do a walk together. And this is part of it too, is finding what is going to feed your soul and bring that more into your life. And it is okay to say, I don't have the bandwidth for that conversation right now. I would love to have a conversation with this when I am more prepared. And I have a boundary. I won't have deep conversations that have a potential to be really hard or challenging after 8 p.m. at night. So here's another one to bow out a little bit graciously. Say, you know what? Let's revisit this in the morning or mid-afternoon when I am my best self. And that's part of knowing ourselves and not letting other people's arrows or hard things devastate us, but taking ownership and responsibility. We have the ability to respond in a way that allows us to exercise our agency.
Yeah. Here's another twist on the same question. How do I exit graciously when someone is constantly triggered by me? I'm not intending any harm, but they constantly perceive it that way. I would say two things. So there are people who perceive harm when you're not intending harm. So you can do two things. One is you can be more curious about it. Like, what was it that I did that harmed you? And that helps the relationship, because even if you didn't intend to harm someone, like you might be texting and driving and you ran over someone's dog and you didn't intend to harm their dog, but you did, right? There's lots of things that we didn't intend to do that we did, right? That it wasn't a malicious or intentional harm, but it did cause harm. So there's one track where you would be curious about that and say, tell me more. Like, what did I do? What did I say that felt harmful to you? Right? So that might be helpful for you to know that you didn't intend it. And that's maybe really true, but it still caused harm and you can show care for that. The second thing, though, is I want to differentiate, and we'll talk a little bit about this on the workshop. What's the difference between hurt and harm? Okay. So if you hurt my feelings because you told me that you're not happy in our marriage, or if you hurt my feelings because you told me that you don't like the way I talk to you because it's abusive, that's not causing harm. You're bringing this topic up in order to try to create some healing in the relationship or some understanding of what needs to change. But sometimes an abuser will use those words after they've harmed you. They've harmed you by, I'll just make something up, but they've harmed you by lying to you and committing adultery. They've harmed the marriage. They've harmed you. That's harm. That's love does no harm, right? And then you keep wanting to know questions about why they did that. What were they thinking? Who was she? Why didn't you care about our family? All the things that anybody who was in that situation would want to know. And they're saying, you keep hurting me. You keep hurting me by bringing all this up. You keep harming me by, you keep smearing my face in my own mess, and that harms me, And so there's a little bit of a difference between that. When the doctor tells you have cancer and you're going to die, it hurts, but it's not meant to harm you, right? It's meant to inform you that this is the truth, right? So the Bible tells us that faithful are the wounds of a friend. Sometimes the things that we say to people do hurt their feelings, do hurt their ego, do hurt their pride, but our intention isn't to harm them. It's to help them. But sometimes we do vomit out some ugly words, or we say some things that are harsh, and maybe we didn't intend to harm them. We just were sharing our feelings, right? So if I turned around at that mother at church and I said, why can't you keep your kids quiet? Right? I wasn't intending to, I didn't say that, but if I had, My intention would not have been to hurt her or harm her. My intention would be just to get her to pay attention to her kids, so I was relieved of the stress of her noisy kids. But I probably still would have hurt her, right? And to own that and to acknowledge that sometimes is hard. So I think those are things that might be life lessons for you to learn. What was it that was harmful? And for him to answer that or her to answer that, well, you hurt my feelings. To say, okay, I understand that. And I can understand where that hurt your feelings, because it hurts our feelings to know that we're not making someone else happy, or that we've done something that you make, that I don't like. That hurts your feelings. Even if I tell you you have bad breath, or, I'm not happy that you're gaining weight or whatever, it's going to hurt your feelings. It just is, right? And whether it's my place to tell you that or not is a different question, but it hurts your feelings for sure. But it's not meant to harm you. It's meant to help you to self-correct so that you can be a better person, right? So I think those would be two ways that I would probably address it, ask questions about it, and be curious. What does he mean? And others is put some boundaries around if it keeps going around the same circle over and over again and there's no closure, right?
Excellent.
I'll give you a great example of that. In my life, I had a friend who told me that I hurt her feelings because I didn't spend as much time with her at a party than I spent with my other friend. It was 3 people at a party, at my dinner party. And I was talking to this one woman about gardening and she was an expert gardener, and I wanted some answers about my question. And this other lady felt like I didn't spend enough private time with her talking about something she was interested in. She told me that. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you, right? That was not my intent. I see that you were hurt. And I'm sorry that you felt hurt. And here's where I had to be honest. But I don't think I want to be in a friendship where I got to time myself on how much time I spend with you versus how much time we spend with that. Makes me feel pressure as a friend. So I had a boundary. I'm not catering to that. I'm not going to change my ways. I didn't mean to hurt her. I was sorry that she felt hurt. I showed her compassion. Thank you for telling me. But I'm not going to change my ways. So you decide whether you want to be my friend or not. Right? That was her decision to make. So I think those are ways that we can have boundaries and still care about the way our behavior impacted someone, even if it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, Leslie, I love that you brought that up. There's a gift that we can give others, and that's compassion and empathy. And it can look as simple as that acknowledging and validating, wow, I see that really hurt you. And, so many of us want to be seen, known, and heard. And so by acknowledging and validating somebody's experience, we don't always have to agree with them to acknowledge and validate what it is that they're going through.
Or change our behavior. Like I had a friend who I was very upset I never sent her birthday cards. I said, I'm happy to send a birthday card to my own parents. That's not my gift. I don't remember birthdays. It's, I'm sorry that you felt hurt, but I'm probably not going to change. So you decide whether you want to be my friend or not. And I think those are honest conversations where you have to be you. And this is what I do well, and this isn't what I do well. And I don't think I want to invest a lot of energy in doing this well just so that you don't feel upset.
Well, Leslie, and I think that's where we can fall into reactation mode. I just made up a new word. But so when we're not being authentically us and we're trying to chameleon all the time, when we don't know who we are, then we can fall right into default as opposed to responding out of who we are. And you are courageous to have that conversation. That's not who I am, but this is who I am. And this is a gift that we can give others when we are in this space of taking responsibility and responding to others.
This would be really true with your husbands too, to say, yeah, I'm sure you're disappointed that I'm not Betty Crocker, but I'm not.
Right. Well, we can own who we are, and then we can invite others to get to know us who we are.
Right.
And then we can also invite others into letting us see them. And we can do that when we're not so judgmental.
Right. Or feeling like we have to be what they want us to be. You see, this is where we've put and I'm just going to talk about marriage now. We put our husbands in a God-centered position. And we'll talk a lot about this in the webinar of what you need to change. When we put our husbands in a God-centered position, we let them tell us what we need to be. That's not their job. That's God's job. Right? Because God is the one who made us. And so if he made us to be a butterfly, he's going to say, hey, stop being a caterpillar. You need to move on and go into the cocoon. You need to move toward growth and get your wings on, girl. And if your husband's saying, I'm feeling threatened if you have wings, I don't want you to have wings. You might fly and I can't fly. Oh, okay. I'll only be what you want me to be. And then we get resentful and we get squashed and we're giving them power and control over our personhood. And God never gave a husband power and control over a wife's personhood. That's not their domain. That's God's domain and your domain. And this is where we've gotten a little mixed up in the church around the whole issue of headship and submission. And I don't have time to go into that. Maybe we'll do another Facebook Live on that. But this is so important because a lot of times our reactions are out of our suppressed. We're angry. We're angry that we're suppressed and we're not allowed to be who God called us to be. Who says we're not allowed to be who God calls us to be? Our husband? Does he have the final say there? No, he doesn't. God's never given him the final say over your personhood. You have the final say over your personhood. Just like Judas had the final say over his personhood. Jesus didn't make him be the man he could be, or Peter. Jesus said, I made you to be the rock. But Peter still had choices to make. But it was between him and Peter, not some other authority. And that's true for you too. Just because you're a woman doesn't change that dynamic. Esther was who Esther was going to be. Deborah was going to be. There's lots of strong women in the Bible, even those who were married. All right, let's go to another question. When I was with my ex, I would realize that he was pushing my buttons and I was getting triggered. So I would try to pause the conversation and I'd say I'd come back. He would follow me and berate me for running away from the conversation and keep yelling at me how I'd never talk about the problems. I just wanted to keep running away. I never had a chance to come back because he never let me go away. What do you do when you're in that kind of situation?
That's a really hard situation. You never have peace because you're being, pursued in a more aggressive way. And so, it says that he is your ex. And so it looks like you made a decision to take care of yourself and to leave a situation in a relationship that was destructive to you and not allow him to devastate you anymore. And I would love to hear what is different for you now that you have breath and you're able to see how that pattern was going for you. Oftentimes when we work, and Leslie's going to be talking about this, I bet, in the workshop as well. So we encourage you, sign up for the workshop. If you haven't reserved your space, do that, because we're going to be talking about some of this, about how to leave that cycle, about how, if you can identify your cycle and about how it is that you're showing up. Oftentimes, as I'm working with the ladies, we'll identify their cycle and we'll see where there is the exit out and what that could be. And it's going to be unique to each one of you. And so one thing for me that I know that I'm experiencing a red flag is if I'm ready to try and defend myself, or if I am ready to try and justify all the time. We talk about Jade a lot, and we can go into reactive mode when we are doing that with someone who is destructive and coming at us. If he never lets you go away, that's incredible information for you. Mature people give each other space to breathe. And so oftentimes, maybe the first step is, are you willing to give yourself permission to breathe and to say, stop, no more? And that's a gift that we can give ourselves, and to realize that we are worthy of that gift. Some of us as women have forgotten our value and our worth. And it is okay. I often say, and I'll remind myself, I don't have to attend every party, every argument, or every conversation.
Yeah. So good, Leanne. That's great. I'm going to give you a phrase to pay attention to. You've used it in this question. So he would never let me go away. Okay. So when you use the phrase, he won't let me, that's a big red flag that you are living with someone who's micromanaging and over controlling you. But the question I want you to ask yourself and reflect upon isn't about him. It's about you. I won't let me disappoint him. I won't let me say no to him. I won't let me stand up for myself. I won't let me put my marriage in its proper place, because I won't let me think about the consequences of that choice. right? And so there's a lot of he won't let me. That's more of a victim mindset, like I don't have choices. But I'd just like you to spin that around, just like that question. Why am I going to die? Why is this happening? What's wrong with me? That I get brain cancer goes nowhere. He won't let me really isn't the question you need to ask. It's why aren't I taking care of me in this situation? If he won't let me leave, so let's say you were kidnapped and you were in a house, he won't let me leave for sure. What am I going to do to get out of here is the question, right? Not how do I convince him to let me leave. The question is, how do I get out of here? What do I need to do? Right? That will yield a whole lot more fruit for you if you are a captive than convincing your captor to let you go. Right? And so he won't let me. And how do I get him to let me is not the question. It's why aren't I using my agency as a grown up to do what I need to do to be safe, to be sane or healthy, and to be strong? Because that's what God calls me to be, right? And when I'm allowing another person to keep me unsafe or make me unsafe, to diminish my mental and emotional health, and to create weakness in me that I'm living in fear and not in faith, then I'm in a terrible relationship, even if it's called marriage. And what do I need to do to take care of me is the question. All right.
So good, Leslie. Powerful truths there. I just pray that, we're soaking this in. These are transformational truths that will allow you to claim your agency and not give all of your power and somebody else control over your emotional, mental, and spiritual well being.
Yeah, here's another question. How do you tell others that you need alone time to refocus? They don't know it's for the best and think you're being overreactive and shut off. Well, first of all, you can't control what other people think. So I think if this could be a freeing moment for most of you, like just like that lady couldn't control what I was thinking about the pickleball choice that she made or the noisy kids in the background or my husband stirring, he couldn't control what I think. I control what I think, right? I'm responsible for what I think. You can't control what your husband thinks when you say, hey, I need to end this conversation. Or well, like Leanne said, hey, I don't want to have a heavy conversation after 8 o'clock. He could think, oh, she's just being a you know what, right? He could think that. You can't control what someone thinks, right? So just give it up. Give it up. Don't even try to control what someone thinks other than giving them, hey, I don't mean it personal, but I'm tired, or I don't, I'm not intending to hurt your feelings, but I'm leaving. If they think you're doing it to hurt their feelings, you're not going to convince them otherwise because you can't control what someone thinks, right? Jesus couldn't control what the Pharisees thought. They thought he was demon possessed. They thought he was a charlatan. They thought he was, trying to steal, people's hearts in the wrong way. He talked to them, but he couldn't control what they thought. And neither can you. Give it up. It's a waste of energy. Just like the wrong question is a waste of energy, trying to change someone's thoughts. Even here, I'm trying to change your thoughts in terms of I'm saying, hey, be responsible for yourself. You could go here and click off Facebook and think I'm the craziest teacher you ever heard. I'm not biblical and I can't control your thoughts. I'm inviting you to think differently, but only you can do that. Only you can do that.
And asking yourself, what's another way to look at it? And so it says, how do you tell others that you need alone time? Tell yourself that too. Tell yourself that it's really okay to take a break and that you do need alone time. And how they take that says everything about them. And like Leslie said, let it go on what their perception of you is going to be their perception of you. And I know I've tried to change other people's perception of me and it doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't.
Right.
How we feel about ourselves. And at the end of the day, ladies, at the end of the day, when you put your head on the pillow, what do you want to be thinking about yourself and the way you showed up and engaged with your world or in that circumstance or in that conversation that day?
All right, we have, let's see. How do you not react to someone who basically ignores you? My husband is polite, stays in his office all day. The kids and I are really hurt by the ignoring, but I can't walk away or take time to regather or whatever. I have all the time I want. Yeah. So there's two things that I would suggest. One is that you not react, but you respond. And you can have thoughtful comments about this. I'm not okay with this. I don't feel happy in our relationship. Our kids are sad that you're ignoring us. I think you can have constructive conversations and not just react in a hurtful or angry way to his indifference, right? And have say, I'm not willing to continue like this. So what do you suggest? So those are boundaries you can have. Those are conversations you can have. Those are words you can think about how you want to say things versus just blurt out in a reactive way your fury at his workaholism or his indifference or whatever he's doing.
Mhm. Well, and I think the other part of that is, hang on, I had a thought on this. Oh, this was it. Is, if he is in his office day and night and you don't have a lot of breathing room for you, invite in a safe, trusted other to help you with the kids so you can get some time to clear your mind, to clear your heart, and to clear your thoughts. And so that will allow you that opportunity to regather in a healthy way. So perhaps that might be a hot tip, is just to do that.
When you're married to someone, and let me just say this pretty clearly, when you're married to someone who is spending all their time working, you're having an idea about why they're doing that. Like they don't care about us. All they care about is themselves. I'm not important. And you might be right. And then again, you might be wrong. Right. So understand that how we see it affects our feelings about it. Right. So if you were to say to him, help me to so if you were to, another approach would be to say to him, hey, I'm really not okay with this. But I have a curious question. Like, why are you working so hard? Like, why do you spend all your time in your office? I'm really curious about that. If you ask that question in a non-judgmental way, maybe he would say something like, I am so anxious about, the kids' college and making sure we have enough money in the bank for retirement. And I'm so worried that this economy is going downhill. And I want to make sure we have enough savings that if something happens, well, you might still not like that he's working so hard, but it might put a different spin on things. Right? So I think it's worth not reacting, but having first an awareness of the story you're telling yourself about why he's working so much. Like he doesn't care and we're not important. And then having a conversation with him about why he's working so hard. Like, why are you in your office all the time? What are you doing? Why is it so important for you to spend so much time at work? He might give you an answer like, I like my work. I'm good at it. You're not that important to me, or something along those lines. I don't want to come out of my office or whatever. But that gives you information in which to respond. So I would just encourage all of you, just like I was telling myself awful stories about the lady behind me, about why she wasn't watching her kids at church, or telling myself awful stories about the pickleball lady or my husband stirring his spoon. We all tell ourselves stories about why someone's doing what they're doing, which may be right and may not be right. Right? May not be right. And so if we want, and I didn't go back and ask those people, but because I didn't have a relationship with them, but if I was getting aggravated by someone I lived with, like that lady was getting aggravated with my friend, like, why doesn't she spend time with me? Why doesn't she spend time with me? Well, oh, she doesn't care about me. I'm not really her friend. That's the story she was making up. Right? And so she talked to me about it. And I said, that's not why I did it. I do want to be your friend, but probably I'm not going to be the kind of friend that watches or gets anxious about monitoring my time that way. I thought you were a part of the conversation. You were listening. It's not like you were sitting in the other room. And I didn't think anything of it. And probably I will continue to function that way. So then she can decide. So she was making up a story about why I did what I did. It wasn't true. And then she decides whether, so maybe if your husband says, I'm really anxious about our finances and the way the world's going, and I need to get money in the bank in case we have to go live off the grid because the whole world collapses, well, then maybe you're going to say, thank you. I understand. And that's a very different vibe than, I don't care about my family and all I care about is making money. Right? And he probably wouldn't say it that way, but he could say something close to that, that this is the most important thing to me. And it's not about you or my family, or I don't enjoy my family, or I feel socially awkward. There might be other reasons. I don't know how to have a conversation with our kids. And so ask. Ask.
Those curious questions. They're powerful.
Yeah.
Here's
All
another.
right.
Read the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. My husband committed adultery in our marriage, but we still want to be in the marriage. Do you advise us to see a marriage advisor?
So I did a whole Facebook Live yesterday on why you shouldn't go to marriage counseling. And if you want to watch that, it's available on Facebook as a recording. So I would encourage you to watch that. So if this was the first time he ever committed adultery, if he confessed it and you didn't catch him, if he came to you and said, I did something horrible, I need to get it off my chest, this is why, if he's got some wherewithal in all of that, then yes, I would encourage you to go to marriage counseling to try to rebuild that trust. If this has been a chronic problem, if he didn't confess, but you caught him, and then he came clean, I would say there's probably a whole lot more you don't know that going to marriage counseling right now is putting like a Band-Aid on a bad sore, or it's like yesterday I used the analogy, if you've got termites in your house and you see all the wood damage from the termites, fixing the wood damage without getting rid of the termites is a waste of time. So marriage counseling is about repair and restore, right? And if he's done damage to the marriage through lying and deceiving and cheating, and that's not addressed in a professional way by someone who's going to get to the root of why did he do what he did and how much did he do and how much do you not know yet, putting it back together before you've done that work is a waste of time and will only cause you more harm. So those are my advice, and I will talk more about this at the webinar. So if you go to the webinar or the workshop next week, just fill out that, go to that where the banner is on the Facebook Live, leslievernick.com/join workshop. Because we will do the workshop completely off of Facebook. We will do the workshop at a completely private site called Webinar Jam. You'll have a chat to talk and we'll answer questions just like this, but it'll be private so that you can be more real, and the webinar will be, in a private space that way. But you have to join in order to get an invitation to come. So you'll get an email just like you do, hey, Leslie's going to be at Facebook, but you'll get an email saying, the webinar is starting soon. Here's the link, right? And then you'll be able to press that link and go to a completely different place.
Well, right. We encourage you, reserve the time out. Give yourself the gift of time. You're worth the investment. Leslie, the webinar or the workshop is amazing, and then the Q&A afterwards is invaluable. So off your calendars, you're offering it 2 times, right, Leslie?
Yeah, so we're doing it at noon Eastern time, and we're doing it at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's next Tuesday. And it'll be live. And it's really much better for you to be there live because you do get the couple 2 things. You get the chat, which we're having here now, and it's a good chat, and hearing other women know that you are not alone and that you're not crazy can be so healing for you. Like, oh my gosh, other people think this way. Other people have this situation. That's helpful. And you'll get a lot of that in the webinar. Plus my coaches will be on the chat answering some questions. And also afterwards, the Q&A will not be in the replay webinar. So you'll get a really robust, just like we're doing this Q&A, there's a lot of teaching that goes on in the Q&A that we didn't get a chance to do in the webinar. And that can be really helpful for you. And so give yourself this gift of a free 2-hour time, 1 hour of just complete workshop, handout, workbook fill-ins, all that. And then the second hour of the Q&A that teases that all apart some more if you need some more information about that. Or your particular situation about that. And that is invaluable. I mean, to have a private session with me for 2 hours would cost a lot of money. All right. And so this is my gift to my population of just being able to speak to more people than just do that. Because I get so many people who call me or ask questions. Can you call me? Can you have a conversation? Have a question? I can't. That's all I would be doing. But I do these webinars and these workshops for that opportunity for you to ask your questions and have that time to talk with me about that. Sherry has a question. I'm going to close with this question. Let me just see if I can unmute it. It's not in our chat, but I often thought or said he won't let me in reference to the fact that I knew I'd suffer afterwards if I did or said whatever I wanted to. In some situations, I still choose not to do or say things because it's not worth the suffering I know I'll have afterwards. So this is important for you to pay attention to, Sherry, that somehow so you've got 2 people who live together. two imperfect, sinful people who live together. But what your husband is saying to you is, if you do something I don't like, you'll pay. That's a really scary system to put yourself under. And I would caution you and challenge you to bring that more out in the open if you feel safe enough to do that. And if you don't feel, because I don't know how you're paying. So if you're paying because he gives you the silent treatment, or if you're paying because he shuts off the credit card and you can't buy anything, or if you pay because you get slapped in the face, those are different levels of suffering. And I'm not sure what your level of suffering is. So I don't mean to say this. If your level of suffering is high, my advice to you would be God's not asking you to do that. God is not asking you to suffer for Jesus willingly in an oppressive situation. Sometimes we suffer for Jesus unwillingly when we're in a captive situation, like a slave or like a prisoner of war. But marriage is not a captive situation, right? Marriage is a willing situation. And God isn't asking you to willingly allow someone to harm you repeatedly just because they're not getting their way. And that's not called headship, getting your own way all the time. So biblically, you have every right to say, hey, I'm not willing to be abused just because I disagree with you. I'm not willing to do that anymore. Not you can't do that, because he certainly can. He does. But God's not asking you to do it. And you may not be needing to do that anymore. So I'm not sure why you do that. Now, if it's suffering in other ways, like he criticizes you or he is unhappy with you, then this may be more your problem, right? That you're a people pleaser and you need him to be 100% happy with you all of the time in order for you to be okay. Like, my husband isn't happy with me sometimes. I decided to go to an art retreat in Mexico and he didn't like it because he got scared for me, because he thinks Mexico has a lot of cartels and he didn't want me there by myself. But I thought, I think it's safe. I want to go. I'm going. And I did that with Iraq too. I went to Iraq all by myself with 2 other people, not him. And he wasn't happy about it either. He didn't punish me. He just wasn't happy. Right. And I know that sometimes he does things that I don't think are the best either. But we both have the freedom to say, you don't have to make me happy. If you're happy, do what you want to do, as long as it's within the boundaries that we have, right? If he cheats on me or something, then that's not okay. But I think that I'm not sure whether the suffering is he's just unhappy that you made that decision. So if you go to school and get a job or do something you want to do, go to a women's retreat, and he's not happy about that, and he says, well, I'm not happy about that, I think what you can say is, I know, I'm so sorry that you're not happy about it, but I'm really happy about it and I'm going. And do it. And do it. And don't let his unhappiness keep you stuck in Smallville and Resentmentville, that he's making you suffer, right? You don't have to suffer if he's unhappy. Let him be unhappy. And I'm not saying be indifferent to his unhappiness. Right? If he's unhappy with something you can change it. And if he, like with my friend who was unhappy with me, all right, she was unhappy with me that I didn't pay more attention to her. I could sympathize. I understand that, but you'll probably still be unhappy with me because I'm not going to change this to make you happy, right? So I think this is where me and you are different. Just because you like to eat meat doesn't mean I like to eat meat. And I'm not going to change my diet just to make you happy. I'm happy to make 2 different meals, or you can make 2 different meals, but I'm going to be a vegetarian and you're going to be a meat eater. And I'm not unhappy that you're a meat eater. And I don't, if you're unhappy that I'm not, that's your problem. And I think this is where women need to have to start differentiate. There's a me, there's a you, and there's a we. And it's not all the same. And sometimes things that, like, my husband loves to watch those war movies. I can't stand watching most TV. If I watch an hour of TV a week, that's a lot of TV. We're different. Does that make him unhappy that I don't sit on the couch and watch TV with him? Probably a little. I'm not going to sit on the couch and watch TV with him. Not more than an hour a week or 2 hours for a movie or something, but not much, because it's not what I want to do with my life. Right? And so I think this is where I'm not sure what you mean by suffer. And so I'd be curious and ask some more questions about that. And I'd like you to be curious. Like, how does he make you suffer? Is it abusive kinds of things? Or is it that he's just unhappy and he's letting you know, and you're like, I can't take it if he's unhappy, so I have to do what he wants. Maybe you can take it if he's unhappy, and he can learn that he can be unhappy and figure it out for himself to let it go. Just like I was unhappy with that lady behind me, And I didn't need her to change for me to be happy. I could change that. That's learning not to react and to respond.
Comes from within.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
What an
So I hope
amazing.
this was helpful. Anything else you want to say, Leanne? We're going to wrap it up, but anything else?
I really just don't. Except for I guess I'm feeling led to say that to everybody within the sound of our voice, that you are worthy and you have value. And it is such a gift that you can give yourself to own who it is God created you to be. And part of that discovery could happen at the workshop. And so we just invite you to reserve your seat at the table for this workshop and, lean in. And if there's somebody that you feel like would benefit from any of the lives that we have done here, share them, and soak in what it is that you want to take away from today. And I would just invite you to type into the chat, because we love to go through, and this is how we learn and grow and serve our community better. What is your takeaway from today on reacting and responding? What is it that you will do different because you have spent the last over an hour with Leslie and I here in the space as we've talked about snakes and snarky comments and different tools and strategies that you can do? How will you put in what you have learned in this last little bit, what insight you have gained? How will you put it into practice to help encourage your well-being and really exercise your agency?
Yeah.
I would love to
I would
hear.
love to see that. Yeah, that's a great takeaway. I'm going to look before I sign up. I'm going to see if anybody put in there. Yeah, I don't see anybody writing in yet. Maybe you need to think about that, but please do. That would be really helpful. And I think it also solidifies for you. My takeaway is I'm going to learn to breathe. My takeaway is I'm going to take better care of myself. My takeaway is I'm going to ask myself the question, not he won't let me, but why I don't let me. My takeaway is I'm going to ask some curious questions. What is your takeaway? What is your takeaway? That would be really helpful for us to know and for you to solidify and saying, this is my one thing I'm going to take away from this time I spent.
Right. And there's always a delay. And I see Cheryl typed in,
Yeah.
what I will do differently is to take a deep breath and try not to react out of emotion. And I will speak up more. Congratulations, Cheryl.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
imagine what will happen for you in that breath space.
Yeah. And it's not that you don't have your emotion, you have it.
That's right.
So if I'm rip roaring angry at something, I take a deep breath. I'm aware I'm angry. Now, what do I want to do? That's my response versus not even thinking about it and just hauling off and hitting somebody, which I have felt like I could do at times. I've never done it, but I feel like I could do it if I didn't take that breath and say, I am so angry right now. What do I want to do? How do I want to handle this? So it's not like you ignore your feeling. You honor your feeling. It just doesn't control you. It just
Right
doesn't
on.
control you.
Oh, there's some great nuggets. I'm going to look into breath work. Let's see. I'm going to talk to God about it. I can have an emotion, but it does not need to have me.
Yeah.
Instead of asking for permission from him, I'm going to be more direct about my needs.
I love that.
I do too.
Yeah.
You get to decide what it is that you need and want, like and prefer. And
Mhm.
sometimes we forget that, doggone it. We
Mhm.
do.
Yeah. I love that. I've never asked my husband for permission about anything. And we have a good marriage. I have asked his concerns about something. I've asked his feelings about something. I've asked his perspective on some things, but I've never asked his permission because I'm a grown up. I don't need his permission. I need his advice. I need his wisdom. I value his opinion, all of those things. That's what you do when you're married. But permission? No. Right. So I think those are things that you need to really think through adult to adult. What kind of marriage do you want to have? Parent-child relationship or adult to adult? I don't ask my friends permission for things, right? I don't ask my parents permission anymore. I'm an adult, right? I care about their opinion. I care about what they think. I care about what's important to them. But sometimes what's important to them, what's important to me are two different things. And then what? Then what, right? You have to decide.
We do. And just because we're different doesn't mean it's bad. And I think we have an opportunity to be who we were created to be instead of a carbon copy of somebody else or
Hmm.
what somebody else thinks that we should be. And I think that this is just another hot tip to throw out there is quit shooting on yourself and quit shooting on other people. And we have some work to do about knowing how to
Hmm.
be and stop shooting.
Yeah. And think about asking yourself the question, like not why about them, but what's going on with me? I think that helps you to take responsibility for yourself, to learn from the situation. And then that helps you to respond to the situation versus just be in the moment and reacting without thinking, because we have our emotions, but we also have our mind that God has given us. And we have his word that he's given us. And when we use all that together, our emotion with our mind and his word, we can have a powerful response that can make an impact. And we can have a very powerful reaction that can have an impact. And one can be very positive and one can be very negative if we're not more conscious about that.
Well, absolutely. And it goes back, Leslie, to that question that you asked at the beginning, one that we can funnel everything down to from the classes you and I have been taking. What matters most right now?
What matters most right now? Mhm.
What is it?
Yeah. And I think even in your marriage, what matters most right now, is it just keeping the peace?
Right.
Or is it living in integrity and honesty? Right. And I can't decide that for you. Only you can decide that, because you have to live with that. But once you decide that, then you have no reason to be resentful about it, because you decided, right? You're not forced to. So even if keeping the peace right now and kind of keeping it at a superficial level because you've got little kids and you need to make a plan for, that's a good decision if you decide that. If you default to that because you're afraid to do anything else, then it may not be a good decision, right? So you get to decide that. So I hope we've given you some tools to be able to do that, to learn to get out of reaction mode and into response mode. And if you're having trouble doing that and you can't do that alone, there was a question on the chat earlier if we offer coaching, and we do. I don't anymore, but my team does, Leanne does. And if you'd like some personal coaching, or you'd like to be a part of a coaching group that we offer a couple times a year, just shoot us an email or go to our website at lesliebernick.com, and there's a little tab that says coaching, and you can apply for a coaching to see if you want to be a coach and if we would be a good fit for you. Our team, somebody in our team would be a good fit for you if that's something that interests you. And sometimes we can't do it alone. Sometimes we do need that extra help and we need that extra accountability. And so our group programs can be really helpful. And we'll be opening our doors to Conquer at the end of our webinar. So if you've heard about Conquer, it's not a group coaching program. It's an educational and support group. So it's a very large group. It's not a small one-on-one or individual thing, but it's a powerful group, and it's a powerful group for Christian women in destructive marriages or getting out of destructive marriages, to get the support and the help they need to make good decisions for themselves, because so often they've not been allowed to make decisions. And so this whole new decision-making thing gets pretty scary if you're responsible for you and you've never been responsible for you. So that's what we do in Conquer. If that's important to you and that is of interest to you, that will be available to you after the webinar. But the workshop will be all about the workshop. We're not going to talk about Conquer until the end. So if that's of interest, then you can stay later and hear about that. And if not, that's totally fine too. All right, we're going to go. Take care and have a blessed day. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live at 7:30 right here on the same station, my Facebook page, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, on the subtle signs of abuse. Some of the subtle signs of abuse. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably talk a little bit about headship and submission there, because I think that the whole misunderstanding of those things and the spiritual abuse that comes with that are some of the subtle signs of abuse. So I'll kind of incorporate a little bit of headship and submission, although Julie did put in the chat another core video that I've done on misunderstandings about headship and submission. And so if that's a big thing for you, you might want to look for that YouTube video on misunderstandings of headship and submission. But I'll incorporate a little bit of that tomorrow. So that's tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, same place. And remember, this is my public channel, so just be careful on what you post. All right, take care. Thanks, Leanne. Bye-bye. God bless.